Hello and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to another session of Economy Weekly Recap, wherein we'll be taking many articles which have appeared in different business related newspapers and analyzing these articles. And for this week, this is the set of articles that we'll be analyzing. Now, before I start the discussion, a very important announcement. We are going to launch the online classroom program for the evening batch. This is purely an English program, and this online batch will start from February 28th, and the timing will be every weekday from evening 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. If you're interested, we are also running a 50% discount program now, and you will also get an extension of 6 months on the course. Let's begin the discussion. The first very important article regarding Food Corporation of India. The government of India very recently has announced that they are going to increase more than double the authorized capital of Food Corporation of India. What are the important points? Point number one. During 1960s, government of India, now to improve the situation of agriculture sector, has implemented various reforms. One such reform was government passed Food Corporation of India Act in 1964, and as a result of this, they established Food Corporation of India in 1965. This is one very important reform. Apart from this, government also introduced MSP during the same period of time. Government also set up Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices in the same duration. Although the CACP was earlier mentioned or was referred by a different name, but now this is referred to as CACP. That is point number one. Point number two. What would be the function of Food Corporation of India? Why it is so important? Please understand this. Food Corporation of India would be conducting procurement activities, procurement activities on behalf of Government of India. Government of India runs various food distribution programs. And when the government runs these distribution programs, they would require somebody else to purchase the food grains from the market. That role was done by FCI. Point number one. Point number two, FCI was also responsible for stabilization of prices. Now, what do you mean by stabilization of prices? Whenever the market prices went up or there was a lot of volatility in the market prices of the agriculture commodities, FCI would play a very important role in stabilizing these prices. For example, in recent times, I'm pretty sure all of you heard of Open Market Stabilization Scheme, OMSS, Open Market Stabilization Scheme. Under Open Market Stabilization Scheme, FCI will ensure that any commodity, for example, rice and wheat, if the prices of these commodities are very volatile, it has already purchased a lot of these food grains. Now it will auction, sell these, ensure supply increases, thereby stabilizing the prices. That was the second very important function of FCI. Third very important function of FCI, to ensure that the farmers will be earning remunerative prices. FCI, whenever they will purchase the food grains, they will pay MSP to the farmers, thereby ensuring farmers are earning right amount, remunerative prices on the food grains. And the fourth very important function of FCI is to ensure that there is sufficient amount of buffer stocks for ensuring whenever there is an emergency demand. For example, in India, Government of India started the practice of having additional food grains which are purchased by FCI more than what is actually required. Let's say there are 10 beneficiaries and per beneficiary 5 kgs of food grains are needed. Rather than simply purchasing 50 kgs of food grains, FCI will purchase more than 50, let's say 80 kgs. And the objective is that this additional 30 kgs will be used as buffer stocks whenever there is an emergency. These additional food grains will be used to ensure constant supply. So these are the four very important functions or the objectives of Food Corporation of India. Next very important point. What is this idea of an authorized capital? What do you understand by the term authorized capital? Because government now says the authorized capital of FCI will be more than doubled from 10,000 crore rupees to 21,000 crore rupees. Please understand this. Authorized capital simply means what is the maximum value of capital a company can raise by issuing equity, by issuing shares in the market. I'll repeat the statement. Here simply the authorized capital means what is the maximum amount of capital a company can raise by issuing shares, by issuing equity in the market. And as such, please understand this. Food Corporation of India is completely owned by Government of India. So in 2019, government increased authorized capital from 3,500 crores to 10,000 crore rupees. I'll repeat the statement. In 2019, Government of India increased authorized capital from 3,500 crores to 10,000 crores. Now, it has further increased this to 21,000 crore rupees. Many of you will be thinking, sir, what is the use? If authorized capital is increased, what is the benefit for FCI? And more importantly, why should I read this for the civil services? Understand the concept very carefully now. Whenever authorized capital is increased for a company such as, let's say, FCI here, it simply means FCI will now have access to more amount of money. Rather than having 10,000 crore rupee in the form of capital, now government will increase its capital in FCI. FCI will get more money which they can use for usage in the working capital as well as, let's say, infrastructure development. They can use it either for usage in the working capital, that is day-to-day operational requirement, or they can use it to develop other types of infrastructure. That is the importance. That is why you will have to understand this. And point number two, right now, in case of FCI, in India, we have a lot of warehousing, but although this is not sufficient, let's say in India, we have a lot of warehousing capacity. Out of that, around 300 lakh tons plus, more than 300 lakh tons is under Food Corporation of India. But out of these 300 plus lakh tons, more than 200 lakh tons is basically a leased warehousing, leased or rented warehousing, which simply means FCI does not own this warehouse. It doesn't own this capacity. It has taken it on rental basis. It has taken it on rental basis. And when you take something on the rent, obviously you will have to pay money. And FCI, please remember this, on annual basis, it is said that FCI pays somewhere around 750 crore rupees on this warehouse space that it has taken on rent or lease. So one point is government will increase the capital. Now FCI can take this capital, develop its own infrastructure, which also means the the rental expenditure burden on FCI is expected to come down. And more importantly, please understand this. All of this is associated with food subsidy burden for the government. Annually, Government of India spends lakhs of crores of rupees under the food subsidy bill. It is expected that with reduction of this expenditure, the burden on FCI to borrow, to take loans from the market will come down. All of you able to connect the dots? The connection is very simple. Government will give money. The FCI, let's say, will use the money, develop infrastructure. And when they develop infrastructure, the rented infrastructure, rented warehousing or leased warehousing requirement will come down. And until now, FCI used to take care of all of these expenses by borrowing, by taking loans from the market. Now the requirement of the loans will come down. So the burden of expenditure in the form of interest, in the form of the rental expenses, etc., will come down. All of these are expected to have a positive impact on the Government of India's food expenditure or food subsidy bill. So these are certain very important points which are associated with the concept of the Government of India hiking FCI's authorized capital from 10,000 crore rupees to 21,000 crore rupees. Now, based on this, I've given an MCQ here. Let's solve it. Consider the following statements regarding FCI. It is a statutory body. Statement 1 is correct. FCI Act is there, and based on that Act, we have set up an authority, hence a statutory body. Second, it functions under Ministry of Agriculture. Many of you looking at the statement will be tempted to say, yes sir, I feel it functions under Ministry of Agriculture, but the statement is wrong. The FCA functions under Ministry of Consumer Affairs. So second statement is wrong. Third one, the equity provided by the center must be used, underline the term, must be used for only asset creation purposes. Statement 3 is wrong. Why? It can be used for working capital requirement, or it can be used for infrastructure development, that is asset creation purposes. So only the first statement is correct. Right option for the question will be option A. Only one of the statement is true. Second article, very important article. Government of India has approved 100% FDI in the space sector. What is the importance of the article? What is this concept? Let's try and understand. Point number 1. FDI simply means foreign direct investment. Understand these points carefully. FDI simply means foreign direct investment. Whenever a foreign company that is not an Indian company, foreign company will bring money into India, will invest in India's physical assets, not financial, physical assets such as warehousing, such as manufacturing facility, etc. That is in a nutshell called as foreign direct investment. Point number 2, whenever FDI will come into India, it is allowed to come into India under two routes. And please understand these are connected to the recent current affairs. The two routes are, one is called as an automatic route. One is a automatic route, and the second one is approval or government route. Now, whenever you talk about automatic route, what does it mean? If government of India has kept any industry or any sector under automatic route, you do not require any kind of approval from the government. You don't require any approval. You do not require any permission. You can directly bring in the money, invest in the sector, and in the next 30 days, inform Reserve Bank of India. That is automatic route. What about approval route? If any sector is kept under the approval route, before you invest in this sector, you will have to take the approval, you will have to take the permission of the government. That is the reason this is called as an approval route. Now that is point number 1. Point number 2, why has government of India made this announcement now? Why has government of India announced that up to 100%, most of the newspapers are reading 100% FDI, but technically speaking, please understand the logic now. Government of India, in order to meet some of its national security requirements, in simple terms, many of these components where FDI is allowed now, there is a dual usage. It can be used for civilian purposes. It can be used for the defense purposes as well. For example, a rocket launcher can be used in defense also, can be used for civilian purposes. So, in order to satisfy its defense requirements, in order to protect its security requirements, has divided all of these into three components. Understand this. First one is rocket launcher. And to understand this very easily, please understand, one is a rocket launcher, second one is obviously a satellite, and the third one is components which are needed. So first one is in the rocket launcher. In a rocket launcher, or you can simply say in case of launchers, the FDI that is allowed is up to 49% under automatic route. Up to 49% under automatic route. What if a foreign company wants to invest more than 49% in this launcher systems as such, or in manufacturing of the launchers in India? Government says it is allowed. It is allowed. No worries. You want to invest, right? More than 49%. But you will have to take the approval of the government. So first one is launchers. up to 49% FDI is allowed. Second one is satellite systems. Second one is satellites. In case of satellites, up to 74% is allowed. And again, what if a foreign company wants to invest more than 74%? That's also allowed. But again, it is through approval route. Government approval is required. Third very important point, any components, systems, subsystems, etc. In case of components, 100% of FDI up to 100% is allowed. So these are the three systems or three breakups that the government of India has done where FDI is allowed within the space sector. Now, before this, was FDI allowed? Is it for the first time that the government is allowing FDI in the space sector? Answer is no. Please remember, historically it is true that space sector has been tightly controlled by the government. That is, government of India has been the entity operating the space sector. But over a period of time, we have realized that the government of India, by controlling the space sector, there is a certain drawback. For example, private sector is not able to participate to a greater extent. Foreign companies, they have a lot of developed technology. We are not able to get access to this, the technology or the latest technology. So in order to address all of this, for the first time in the 2020, all of this has started a couple of years ago. In 2020, through the government route, through the approval route, certain amount of FDI was allowed. And in the last year, 2023, Government of India brought out the space policy. And under the provisions, multiple provisions of space policy, Government of India wanted to promote private sector participation in the space sector. And all of this finally led to the Cabinet Committee approving 100% or up to 100% in the space sector. Now, second part of it, what is the reason? Is there going to be a benefit of this, etc.? Let's start. Point number one. With FDI being allowed in the space sector now, we are expecting lot of investment in the sector. Understand this? We are expecting lot of investment in the sector. Investment both from the foreign companies in India as well as domestic private sector companies within India. So we are expecting lot of investment from the external market as well as domestic market. Point number two, if you talk about India's space sector, the global space market is very, very large now and it is expected to keep on expanding, growing at a very faster pace in the coming years. But if you look at the market, India's space market, it is generally said India's space market will account for around 2 to 3% of the global space market. So the demand is very high. This is one of the very important sectors which is going to boom now. And that is the precise reason government is expecting huge amount of investment which will promote the growth in the space sector, and we are expecting that in the next decade, by 2033, we are expecting India's space market will account for somewhere around 8%, of the global space market. So we are expecting very good growth rate in the space sector. Third very important outcome, India requires lot of access to technology. India requires lot of access to technology. And because there were certain restrictions regarding FDI entry into India, specifically in the space sector, with these restrictions being liberalized now, with these restrictions being taken out by the government, we are expecting Indian companies will be able to enter into joint venture, more important, joint venture, and Indian companies will be able to get access to latest technology, latest technology, right? Now, these are the 4 points. In addition to these 4 points, one more very important point. What is the fifth point? The fifth point is that in the space sector only, in India, there are a lot of startups. There are a lot of startups which are there in the space sector. In fact, it is said that in 2014, there was only one startup in the space sector. And understand this, in 2014, there is only one company in the space sector. And by 2023, the latest data, by 2023, it is said that there are around 189 startups in the space sector. So with this kind of announcement by the government, we are expecting that these startups will be able to get a lot of benefits because of these relaxations. So these are certain very important points associated with the government of India's announcement of allowing up to 100% FDI in the space sector. Based on this, I have given a question here. Consider the following statements regarding FDI. Statement 1. With inflow of FDI, India's external debt increases. Will it increase? Please think logically. If FDI will come into India, will India's external debt keep on increasing? Answer is no. Please understand, because FDI is investment in ownership. In FDI, debt is not created. You do not borrow the amount under FDI. The foreign company is investing the money in Indian market. So it doesn't lead to increased debt of the government. First statement is wrong, or India's debt will not increase. Second statement, FDI under automatic route is requiring FIPB approval. Right? FDI under the automatic route requires FIPB approval. Point number 1, under automatic route, as already mentioned, you do not require anybody's approval. You can directly bring the money, invest in the market, and in the next 30 days, inform Reserve Bank of India. But even then, what is this FIPB? Please understand this. Earlier, back in the year 1991, Government of India, in order to promote, in order to attract a lot of foreign investments, set up one authority. And that authority was Foreign Investment Promotion Board, FIPB. And this authority, back in the year 2017, was abolished. And moreover, the FIPB used to take care of the approval route, government route under FDI, not automatic route. So second statement is also wrong. Foreign Investment Facilitation Portal, FIFP, has been set up to facilitate foreign direct investment proposals. Third statement is true. Understand the technicality here. Under the FDI inflow, I said there are two ways FDI can flow into India. One is approval route, second one is automatic route. Under approval route, whenever the investments are above 5,000 crores, the approval has to be taken from the cabinet. And whenever investments is up to 5,000 crores, it has to go through FIFP, Foreign Investment Facilitation Portal. The third statement is correct. This is a portal, a single point portal where investors will apply for clearances and they will get the clearances. The third statement is correct. Right option for this question will be option A. Only one statement is true. Third important article. RBI allows banks as well as non-banks to issue PPIs for public transport. Now, what is this PPI? What is the usage of this? Why has RBI done? Let's understand this. Point number 1. PPI simply means prepaid instrument. Write it here. PPI simply means prepaid instrument. And what is this idea of a prepaid instrument? Very simple. Let's imagine I will issue a card to you. I will give a card to you and I'll simply say, using this card, you can purchase goods and services in the market up to, let's say, 5,000 rupees. Which means once I give the card, you will take the card, you will keep on purchasing goods and services as long as money is there, as long as you do not exhaust the 5,000 rupees in the card. So this instrument, and look at the term there, prepaid instrument. This instrument where money is already loaded in the instrument, and you can keep on using this instrument, such an instrument which is used for purchasing goods, services, using the value, using the money that is already loaded is called as prepaid instrument. According to RBI guidelines, there can be two types of prepaid instruments. One is full KYC, full KYC, full KYC prepaid instrument. And the second one is basically referred to as, right, minimum or small PPI, minimum or small PPI. Now, what is this full KYC PPI, minimum or small PPI? Imagine I'll give you a prepaid card. You can use it only to purchase goods and services, and very limited amount of money is there, and you do not have to provide any KYC. Know your client or know your customer, KYC norms are not needed. Such kind of PPIs where KYC norms are not required and the usage is very limited, these are called as a minimum PPIs or small PPIs. But please understand this, using these PPIs, you can only purchase goods and services. You cannot use these PPIs to transfer funds. You cannot use PPIs to withdraw cash. These kind of utilities are not associated with small PPI. What about full KYC PPI? What about the full KYC PPI? You can use the full KYC PPI either to purchase goods or services. If you want to withdraw cash using the card, allowed. If you want to transfer funds using this PPI, allowed. That is called as full KYC PPI. So these are the two types of PPI. Now this is the point. Now, what is the use of it? Why RBI has actually extended it to be issued by banks as well as non-banks? Specifically, please understand, for public transport. For public transport, right? What is this public transport? What is the use of it? Please understand. There are certain operators in the economy by the name of MTS. There are certain operators in the economy which are referred to as MTS, mass transit systems. Mass transit systems. What do you mean by mass transit systems? Delhi, Mumbai, the Delhi Metro, not Delhi, Mumbai, Delhi Metro Rail Corporation. This is a corporation which will provide you a transportation facility in the city of Delhi. So there are multiple mass transit systems or transportation systems which are there in India. RBI now says across all of these, right, MTSs, across all of these MTSs, you can start using prepaid instruments. Is it okay? Across all these MTSs, you can use, right, only one prepaid instrument. And not just that, you want to pay tolls, you can use the prepaid this instrument and pay it. You want to pay for parking, then also using this PPI, you can make a payment. And in addition to this, at any point of time, please remember the guidelines now, at any point of time, you can have a maximum of 3,000 rupees. You can have a maximum of 3,000 rupees in this PPI. And this PPI will be there till perpetuity. There is no deadline for this. There is no due date for this PPI. Money will be there as long as it is up to 3,000. You can keep on using it. So these are some of the very important features of the prepaid instruments for MTS. Prepaid instruments for MTS. In short, RBI calls this as PPI MTS. And what about KYC? Since there is so much of discussion about KYC, is there any KYC required for PPI MTS? RBI has announced that no, there is no KYC mandate for this. There is no KYC requirement for this. So these are certain very important points regarding PPI MTS. In a nutshell, you can use it for MTS, payment in the MTS. You can use it for parking. You can use it for payment of waterways charges, right, or even tolls, etc., etc. And RBI says the whole objective of allowing the banks as well as the non-banks to issue these PPIs now is to promote digital transactions, digital payments. Ease of payment should be increased, right, etc. So that is the reason RBI has announced a new type of an instrument by the name of PPI MTS. Now, let me go to the next important article, which has appeared in Hindu newspaper on 18th of February. Joblessness is rising in the country. There is a study which has been conducted by multiple authorities, multiple institutions. A study has been conducted And this study has thrown up certain very interesting observations. As far as I'm concerned, should you remember all the data that is given in the article? My answer is no. You don't have to remember the article or the data in the article, but certain important observations you should definitely know and remember. Point number one, the study has found out that over a period of time, even today, agriculture agriculture attracts a large number of working population. Agriculture accounts for very large number of working population in India. But agriculture's contribution to the GDP is comparatively very less. Generally the data is agriculture accounts for around 50% of the working population and it contributes in the range of 16 to 18% to the GVA or the GDP number. This is the first observation. Second observation, the employment elasticity. This is interesting. Please remember this. The employment elasticity has not improved by a large number. Right? In fact, the article says employment elasticity, employment growth rate has stagnated over a period of time. Now, what is the side of employment elasticity? Employment elasticity simply measures what is the productivity of growth in terms of generation of jobs. I'll repeat my statement. How productive is your GDP growth in terms of creation of jobs? That is called as employment elasticity. The formula, in simple way, the formula for employment elasticity, I'll start using the short form. Double E basically measures the percentage growth rate in employment divided by percentage growth rate in your GDP. So again, in a nutshell, I'll repeat it. Employment elasticity measures how productive is your growth in terms of generation of jobs. And this article or this survey has found that there is a stagnancy. The employment elasticity has not improved by a much. And as a result of this, in the last one and a half a decade, because this has considered multiple decades here, from 1980s, 1990s to around 2020. This is a time period which has been considered in the study. In the last one and a half decade, no doubt India has experienced a very good growth rate. GDP numbers, yes, the growth rate has been very good. On the other side, because of a stagnancy, because of not much improvement in the employment growth rate, the article says India has been experiencing a jobless growth phenomenon. A jobless growth phenomenon has been observed, right, especially in the last one and a half decades in India. That is post 2004 and 5 till 2018 and 19. Fourth very important point. No doubt there has been an improvement. There has been improvement in working population in India. But the article or the study has found that there is a gender inequality. There is a gender inequality. Please remember this. Gender inequality that has been found or gender disparity that has been found. What do you mean by gender inequality or gender disparity? The survey or the study shows that out of the total working population in India, out of the total labor force participation rate, the female labor force participation rate has been much lower compared to male labor force participation rate. So the survey says there has been a gender disparity in the working population. Fifth very important point. Very important point. The unemployment rate. This is interesting, by the way. Fifth point is interesting. The unemployment rate amongst youth with higher education qualification. I repeat, the unemployment rate amongst the youth with higher educational qualification has been found to be higher compared to the unemployment rate, right, with lower educational qualifications. Is it okay? I'll repeat my statement. The unemployment rate amongst the youth who have higher education is higher compared to those people with lower educational qualifications, which means higher qualified you are, more unemployment rate has been observed. So this is the fifth very important point which has been mentioned in the survey. Now many of you might be thinking, sir, why is it happening? What is happening? Why is that all of these observations have been done? The two very important points which are mentioned in this is, point number one, there are various sectors which have no doubt attracted lot of investment, but these sectors have not been creating the appropriate or expected number of jobs. I'll repeat my statement. The survey says, or the study says, that there are various sectors which have attracted lot of investments, but in terms of employment generation, they have not worked out very well. The performance has not been as per the expectations. That is the first observation. Second observation, they use a term, please remember this, they use a term labor displacement. They've used a term in the study, labor displacement. What do you mean by labor displacement? Whenever people will lose the job involuntary, they are not quitting the job, involuntary, because of, let's say, relocation of a company, because of the company removing them, involuntary, when people will lose the job, that is basically called as labor displacement. And this study shows that there has been a net labor displacement, and that is the precise reason why you will see that unemployment rates, right, for highly educated youth is higher. The labor growth rate has got stagnated. There is a jobless growth phenomenon, etc. So these are some of the observations which have been provided in the above study or above survey. So what is the way forward? The study also says the way forward for India will be that they will have to invest a lot of money, and right, they will have to invest money in labor intensive sectors. They will have to invest a lot of money in labor intensive sectors. Right? These sectors will be able to generate a lot of jobs for the youth in India. So these are certain very important points. This is a paper which has been published in one of the magazines. Go through this very carefully. Next article. DPIIT has proposed to hike local content in public procurement. And this has spooked various companies over this higher target that could be set up now. What is the idea? What is this concept? Whenever government tends to procure goods and services, or whenever governments will give out tenders to various companies, let's say private sector companies, generally the government will have a requirement by the name of public procurement. Public procurement policy will be there. Now, what is this public procurement policy? Back in the year 2017, Government of India came out with certain guidelines. And post that also, in order to promote the Make in India concept, Government of India has been amending these guidelines over a period of time. And one of the outcomes, or one of the very important provisions of these guidelines, is that companies which wants to compete and get tenders, get certain orders from the government, they will have to procure more and more from the domestic market. I hope you understand this. Let me explain. Imagine here is a company. Imagine here is a company. If this company wants to bid, participate in the tenders of Government of India. In fact, whenever government calls these kind of tenders, they classify these as suppliers. They classify this as class 1 supplier, class 2 supplier, etc. So if I'm a supplier, if I want to participate in this process, government says I will have to procure some of these components from the domestic market. Right now, please remember this, the class 1 suppliers, these are expected to have a procurement, the domestic procurement of at least 50%. I hope you understand this. Please remember this, the class 1 companies are expected to have procurement of at least 50%. And the class 2 are expected to have a procurement of at least 20%. A public procurement requirement is at least 20% for class 2 and at least 50% for class 1. It is expected that the DPIIT will propose and increase this from 50% to 70% and from 20% to 50%. Again, this is expected. This is supposed to happen. It has not yet happened. What is the concern? Why the article simply says the companies are worried about it? Reasons are very simple. Point number one, many of these domestic companies feel that if the requirements are increased like this, many of these companies are saying if the requirements are increased like this, it's very, very difficult to meet these requirements. And they give a data also. For example, government under Make in India, that is specifically under PLI, has been promoting manufacturing of mobile phones in India. Even despite promoting so much, the content requirement, the domestic level, or let's say the procurement from the domestic market is up to a level of around 15% to 20%. And if now Government of India increases this from 50% to 70% for some of them and from 20% to 50% for some of them, the concern is that one, they will not be able to meet these very strict guidelines. That's the first concern. These are very stiff guidelines. Point number two, they are saying that if we are not able to meet these guidelines, lot of us will be not allowed to participate, will be disqualified, we will not become eligible to participate. And if I do not become eligible, then automatically the foreign companies, the components or the inflow from the foreign companies will start increasing. So the concern that has been raised is that these are very stiff, these are very strict guidelines, and second, this might actually help the foreign companies, not Indian companies. And as such, please understand the argument here. Already many of the companies which are participating under PLI, production linked incentive, many of these companies have raised a concern that many of the conditions which are imposed by the government, for example, let's say investment target, for example, sales target, etc., these are very stiff, these are very difficult to adhere to. So there is already a concern which has been raised by various manufacturers, not specifically in the public procurement, but under PLI. So these are certain very important points associated with the article. Next important article, Russia has used up most of its rupee balance in Indian banks, a statement which has been provided by Indian officials. Now, let's try and understand what is the importance of the article. Let's go point by point. Point number one, couple of years ago, let's say 1.5, around 2 years ago, when Russia attacked Ukraine, the Western economies came together and they imposed sanctions on Russia. So point number one, sanctions on Russia were imposed. And because the sanctions were imposed, India being a very good trading partner with Russia, India being a major trading partner with Russia, these sanctions affected the trade between India and Russia. Point number three, in order to reduce this disruption, in order to reduce the impact of these sanctions, RBI allowed the concept of ostro accounts being opened by Russian banks in India with Indian banks. So many of these Russian banks have opened ostro accounts with Indian banks, such as they have ostro accounts with ICICI, they have ostro accounts with HDFC, they have accounts with UCO Bank. Of course, these are some of the banks which have been allowed by Reserve Bank of India to provide this kind of a facility. Next point, India will export, India will import. But please remember, again, in the context of Russia, please remember the imports from Russia, the imports from Russia into India have increased. They have ballooned. And not just this, imports are very high. And point number two, Russia is a very important defense trade partner for India. We import a lot of these defense products from Russia. So the imports are valued at a much higher level compared to exports, which simply means India has a trade deficit. India has a trade deficit with Russia. And when you have a trade deficit, it simply means you'll have to pay additional extra money to other country in this context. Now, because it is Russia and we are not allowed to settle the transaction in terms of dollars because of the sanctions, they have opened ostro accounts in Indian banks. Now, this additional rupees, because of India's trade deficit, this additional rupees was lying in these accounts, was simply sitting idle in these accounts. And this was raised as a concern by Russian counterparts. They raised an issue couple of months ago. They raised an issue. They said No doubt we are conducting trade with you. We are giving you oil, we are giving you defense products, etc. But one of our concerns is that this additional rupees, right, are simply sitting idle in the bank account and we are concerned about it. And now government officials have clarified that this amount, additional funds or additional rupees which was simply sitting in these WOSTA accounts have been mostly used up by Russia. They have mostly used these rupees up. Where? What have they done with these additional rupees which are extra rupees because of India's trade deficit? The experts or the officials have stated that they have used these rupees to invest in financial market. They have used up these rupees to invest in the financial market in India. They have used up these rupees to purchase government bonds. To purchase government bonds. They have used up these additional rupees to invest in India's infrastructure projects. So the government officials now have clarified that no, there is no concern, don't worry. The trade will continue because Russian counterparts, they have been able to use these additional rupees which were sitting in the OSTA accounts for various other types of investments in India. And this is important. This is important. Why? As already mentioned, India and Russia are important trading partners. Point number one. And point number two, lot of defense products are exported from Russia into India. And if the payments are not settled or if the rupees are not being used by the Russian counterparts, they would not prefer this kind of a settlement. They would not prefer to conduct trade with India over a period of time. So facilitation of these kinds of rupee investments will help in a longer duration for India's trade relations with Russia to thrive, to continue despite sanctions being imposed on Russia. So these are certain important points. Please be very, very careful. Next article, two small articles are there. First one, experts have proposed Amul type cooperative model for neem oil. What is the importance? Please understand this. Point number one, the article simply says we require lot of neem plants. We need to basically plant and increase the number of neem plants in India. The reason being, many of you start wondering now, sir, why do we require neem plants? Answer to that is, whenever you have neem plants, the neem seeds, the seeds of this plant can be used in certain sectors. The neem oil can be used in certain sectors. And in this very article, the experts have stated that in regions where the neem plants have been cultivated, where this region is basically having lot of neem plants, the average temperature of the region is around 3 to 5 degrees lesser compared to other regions. So as such, please understand, there is a need to develop or there is need to basically plant a lot of these neem plants in India. Now what is the situation? Please look at the data here. The data simply says in case of India, around 20 million neem plants are there. There are around 20 million neem plants. If you want to meet the demand over a period of time for neem oil, right, let's say neem seed which will be used in various sectors for controlling the rise in the temperature, etc., we need to increase the number of plants from 20 million to 140 million plants. And that is again factual information given in the article itself. And the third point I want you to observe from this article is that there are a lot of these neem plants in the southern part of India, right? Lot of these are found in the southern part of India. But having said so, the one state which accounts for the highest number of neem plants, that is around 40% of the neem plants, right, have been found in UP, Uttar Pradesh. So these are the three very important points. I want you to make an observation. Take only these points. Apart from this, they also told or they have also given information regarding how many types of neem plants are there, how many of them are available in India, etc. etc. But beyond this, I don't think so UPSC will ask you a question, let's say in the mains examination, to write about utility of a neem plant in India. But these are the important points. The last article for the day. The last article. RoDTEP Center is evaluating feasibility of export benefits to SEZs and EOUs. What is the argument here? From the 1st of February 2021, government introduced a new scheme to promote exports by the name of RoDTEP, Remission of Duties and Taxes on Export Products. Now, more than 8,000 product lines have been covered under RoDTEP and they are getting benefits in different ranges. Right? For some of them, it is around 1%, for some of them, it is around 4%. So, different products are getting different level of, right, let's say the tax remissions under RoDTEP. But having said so, there are two types of export units in India. Right? There are two types of schemes under which export units have been set up. They have not been included under RoDTEP. One is Special Economic Zones. Government of India passed Special Economic Zones Act, and under this, it promotes certain regions, notifies certain regions as special economic zones, and the objective is to promote exports from this region. In addition to this, government also has a scheme called as Export Oriented Unit Scheme, EOU scheme. And under the Export Oriented Unit Scheme, the objective is again manufacture and promote as much exports as possible from India. So, Government of India, after the RoDTEP scheme was launched, excluded the SEZs as well as EOUs to get the benefit of RoDTEP. Some of you might be thinking, sir, why? What is the logic behind it? Government said the amount of money that would be required will be much higher if both of these are also included under RoDTEP. Right? And that is a precise reason Government of India as of now has not included both of them. But now the article simply says there is a discussion which has been happening between different ministries under Government of India, and it is expected that going forward the SEZs as well as export oriented units will also be included under RoDTEP scheme in order to promote, in order to provide certain tax remissions, tax benefits to these units which are present here, and their export potential, export benefits will start increasing. So these are certain important points mentioned in this article. This is mostly important, mainly important for preliminary examination. For mains examination, the overall concept of RoDTEP can be asked by civil services, the commission as such. So these are the various articles which I wanted to cover from the last 1 week. Again, in the next week, we'll cover a couple of more important articles which will appear in various business related newspapers. If you like this initiative, please hit the like button and kindly do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you. Have a great day.